in order to be a well-rounded jazz musician, you have to study all of the great black music. You know, Scott Joplin and Dixieland and Louis Armstrong, and all the people from his area, or as many people as you can get a hold of. Also gospel music and blues, you know, and of course bebop and swing. You have to study all of it, and then the jump early rock and roll bands from the 50s, early late 40s, early 50s. Then the R&B of the late 50s and the 60s, and all of it. You have to study all of that, and then the early funk records. Kool and the Gang and James Brown, and all of that. You have to listen to that stuff. You have to get the history of black music to really know what it's all about, how to approach it honestly.
Hi everyone, welcome to Jazz Rocks with Adam. Today my guest is a guitar player that may not be a household name, but is someone who I feel is an important player because he's still tied closely to the jazz tradition, which means to me a mix of blues and bebop, especially. There's getting to be less and less of you guys around.
That's true.
Yeah. He was born in New Haven, Connecticut, and moved to New York City in 1978, was it? To play with Jon.
1978. Yeah.
And he moved to New York City to play with Jon Gillespie, otherwise known as Dizzy. Since that time, he has worked with jazz heavyweights such as Paquito D'Rivera, Jon Faddis, Jon Patton, Hamiet Bluiett, and Henry Threadgill. He's a super cool dude, and I hope he considers me a friend. Ed Cherry, thanks for doing this interview.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me.
We actually had to postpone the interview twice, so I hope you're feeling better.
Yeah, I'm good. It's all good.
Good.
Yeah.
So what's going on in your life right now?
Well, trying to keep a positive outlook. The gigs. I've been working a little bit.
Right.
Not as much as pre-COVID, but I'm working here and there, and for the most part, the gigs are all good. And I'm just trying to enjoy myself playing with great musicians here in New York City.
Yep, that there is.
Yeah. And trying to have a stable home life.
Yeah, that's always good.
We just bought a dishwasher, so that's a big thing for me.
That's right. I think I saw your Facebook post or whatever on that. That's right.
Yeah, man.
The little things in life.
Yeah, exactly.
What have you learned, if anything, from this whole 2-year stint of life being kind of turned upside down, or at least different? Have you learned anything from this, or?
Well, you gotta be. I think you have to be. I have to try and be a little more proactive, trying to make stuff happen for myself. I mean, I was kind of paralyzed the first few months or a year. I was sitting at home, Netflix and Amazon. Me and the remote were old friends. It just kind of like had me stuck for a while. I slowly started coming out of it and tried to find students online. I started seeing a lot of my friends started teaching. And I'm not a big one for teaching. I'm not. I don't have a lot of students. I never did. But I started trying to hustle up some students, And I had a few. I had more than I ever did that first year. About the end of the first year of the lockdown, I started having several students online. I also, had to figure out how to get some money coming in, other ways of getting money to come in. So I
Yep.
started, checking out all the grants that were available to musicians. Uh,
That's a full-time
and
gig in itself right there, probably.
yes,
Just
yes,
doing
yes,
that.
it is. The grants that were available, and I got some. I got enough money to kind of make it through. Then the New York started to open up a little bit. And started getting little solo guitar gigs here and there, and that was fun. In the summertime, out in the open. Yeah, but this COVID thing, it's kind of taught me that I have to be a little more proactive when things start to slow down. And try not to get too depressed.
Yeah. Well, I had shoulder surgery done
Yeah,
just before COVID. Like it was
yeah,
literally the day before Christmas when I had the surgery done, and
yeah.
I couldn't. The doctor said I couldn't do any gigs or anything like that for like
Mm,
3 months.
wow.
Well, that's
I had that.
right when he gave
Yeah.
me the go ahead to start playing and out again. That's right when everything
Mm,
got shut down.
wow. Yeah,
So
I had I had that shoulder thing before the COVID,
yeah.
about a year before the lockdown. I had a shoulder just my shoulder just kind of locked up,
Hmm.
seized up, my left shoulder, and the doctor said it was like a cumulative effect from the years of the guitar strap, the weight of the guitar
Mm-hmm.
on my shoulder, and I couldn't play for about 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Not at all.
That's why I sit down now when I play. I
Oh,
don't stand up
exactly.
at
Yeah,
all. Yeah.
yeah. That's sit down.
Um. I haven't. I don't think I've stood up on a gig for a long time.
Yeah, you'll rarely see me standing up playing
Uh-huh.
anymore. You know.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, with me, it was a torn rotator cuff.
Ooh.
Yeah. The
Wow.
main tendon that attaches to the top of the bone here was completely severed
Hmm.
off.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
How did that happen? How did that
I
happen?
I think it was already damaged a little bit from a skiing accident like that happened when I was like 21 or something.
Hmm.
And then I slipped down the stairs on the subway.
Wow.
And
Ooh.
then it just reefed my arm back, and I think that's what tore it off.
Oh man.
Yeah, it was
Wow.
nasty.
You slipped on the subway, yeah, on the stairs.
Yep. Yep.
Uh,
It was really, really greasy, really slippery, cold day. Just,
man.
I think they put, that salt and whatever they put down to melt the
Hmm.
ice. Well, I think that just makes it
Hmm.
even slipperier, and I just, phew.
Wow.
And I even had my guitar in my back, and I just went boom, 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 boom down the stairs
Yeah.
on top of my guitar.
Yeah. I think that happened to me once. Then I remember falling, but trying to like hold my guitar up so it wouldn't bounce.
Yeah.
You know, boom, 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 boom. I had the guitar
Oh, the tales of living in New York, eh?
Yeah, right.
Um, so the people that you played with that I listed earlier were some of the most known people. Who isn't on the list that you feel are important musicians, but weren't as well known to the general public that you have played with, maybe?
This drummer Firon Clough, who I haven't played with in quite a while, but he's a pretty important drummer in the scene. Firon Clough, uh, and we had at one time I had a trio with Firon and a bass player, great bass player Andy McKee,
Mm-hmm.
and Andy's a great player as well. Uh, been playing a lot lately in my trio with Kyle Kohler, who was one of the great Hammond B3 players of our time. You know, I think he's like an extension of Jimmy Smith, Don Patterson, Larry Young, you know. And he came up old school, you know, playing with the Cats in Philly. Bunch of young drummers, McClinty Hunter, Chris Beck, you know, Anwar Marshall. Anwar's playing with Joey P. Francesco right now, so it's kind of hard to get him for gigs anymore.
Right. Yeah, because Joey plays when especially, man, when before COVID, he was like maybe doing 300 dates a year, maybe, or something. Like,
yeah, you know, he's one of those cats that, you know, he's working all the time.
Yeah.
As well, he should be.
Yeah.
One of the masters. Yeah, there's a lot of great players here and in Europe. You know, I've met a few guys in Europe. I don't know a lot of guys, but I know a few guys in Europe who are also great players.
Right.
And you know, before COVID, I was able to go play with them, you know, 2, 3, 4 times a year, you know, do little 1 or 2 week tours, you know, in France or Italy, Germany a couple of times. But yeah, there's a lot of cats. There's a lot of guys. You know,
yeah, it's not just in North America anymore, right? There's a lot of people that can play
all over.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All over.
Well, let's go back into time a little bit. Like, how did you get started playing music?
I started in about 3rd grade playing clarinet in the school band. I started playing clarinet from 3rd grade till about 6th grade. And then around 7th grade, I got a guitar for Christmas. But clarinet, I really enjoyed playing clarinet. And I wanted to be a saxophone player. You know, like the progression is, you know, you play clarinet, then you go maybe to alto, and then on to tenor, and, you know, all the bigger horns, you know. And I kind of thought I wanted to do that. But then I started seeing the guitar on television back in those days in the 60s. You know, there was a lot more live music on TV, rock and roll, and the, you know, jazz groups as well. I mean, when's the last time you saw a jazz group on television? You know, but back then, you know, you could see occasionally a jazz group on TV. You know, but definitely there were, you know, rock bands, and I was, you know, I liked the look of the guitar. I liked how cool it looked, you know, and I liked girls screaming and all of, you know, all of that, you know. So you know, I asked my parents for a guitar, and I got one for Christmas, and just continued to play it day and night. And my parents let me do it. They didn't say, put that guitar down and blah, 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 blah. They were very supportive of what I was doing. They saw that I was into it, you know, and, you know, I was at home playing the guitar, and I wasn't out running the streets. You know, I was in my room playing my guitar, you know, and I wasn't out in the street causing trouble, you know. So, and they were supportive, you know. And my dad also played. He started playing the guitar when I did. And I remember my dad driving me to guitar lessons. I had the 30-minute Saturday morning guitar lesson at the local music store. So
same here.
So, yeah. So, you know, I would take my lesson, then he would take his lesson. And then after the lesson, you know, he'd take me to McDonald's or something. But it was fun morning, you know. So we both took guitar lessons. I got through, I think it was Mel Bay Book 2. You know, those are great books. I still use them for some students, you know, Mel Bay.
Yeah.
You know,
I went through the same thing. I think I actually got to maybe grade 6 or 7 or something like
that. Wow. You're a professional.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
man.
it's
So yeah,
so
yeah.
weird that we're similar that way, but except it wasn't my dad
Mhm.
that took lessons with me, it was my mom.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And we went like
Nice.
at the same time. Yeah. But I
Hmm,
think that only
hmm.
lasted maybe for like a year or a year and a half or something
Yeah,
before, and then she went back to work. There was no
yeah,
time for
yeah, yeah,
guitar.
yeah. Yeah. So right around the end of book one, going into book two, I started playing. I found some, my friends in the neighborhood and who played, drummer and another guitar player. And the drummers, I think the drummer's brother sang. so
Right.
so we had like two guitars, no bass at that time, two guitars, drums, and vocals.
Ah,
And
who
we had a
needs
little band.
bass?
Yeah, right. And and, uh, and we had a blast, and we would practice, like in my backyard. My parents would let us practice, occasionally,
Hmm.
and and it was fun. It was a lot of fun, and it was like teamwork and learning songs, and it was all new for all of us, and it was fun learning those, James Brown tunes, all ninth chords, just
Right.
vamp out, vamp out for 30 minutes,
That stuff is
and
great to learn with
yeah,
because you got to learn how to groove, make it sit.
yeah, definitely, definitely,
Yeah.
and learning those parts, like people wouldn't take you seriously if you didn't play the parts that they heard on the record
Hmm.
just like that.
Hmm.
You had to, so it was like ear training, and learning how to groove with others, and not just playing along with a record, or
Yep.
some other pre-recorded device, uh, learning with humans, uh, grooving and
Hmm.
ear training and all of that, and then we started getting little jobs, after school dances and things like that. Then you had to learn how to, conduct yourself, like being nice to people and,
Especially if you wanted to get paid at the end of the night.
yeah, yeah, but, you know.
Yeah.
So it was a kind of school, just being in that first band, those first couple of little bands, when we were like 11, 12, 13 years old,
I was just going to ask you, how old were you when you first started gigging?
Yeah, seventh grade. So what is that? 13, something like that. 12, 13, seventh grade. So that's after school dances,
Yeah.
you know,
That's what
and,
I joined the
and little
musicians union
weekends.
at 12 and I started doing gigs.
Wow. I knew nothing about musicians union. it was just me and my friends in the neighborhood
Yeah.
jamming out, you know.
Cool.
I didn't learn anything about musicians union or anything like that until later.
Yeah, I haven't been in the musicians union for a long time.
Yeah, neither have I.
um, who was the first musician that had the biggest impact on your formative years that you would say?
I liked the guitar sounds coming out of the James Brown band. You know, I think his name was Jimmy Nolan. He's one of the names that keeps popping up, but I'm not sure. He may have been on some of those records, but I've seen studio pictures where it was damn, what's the guy's name? His name just went right out of my head. But they were like studio musicians uh, who were jazz players on some of those dates. Like
Mm.
Cold Sweat date. I think the Cold Sweat recording was done in New York, and I'm trying to remember who this guitar player was. He was jazz player. And I remember seeing the studio picture where he's playing like a big Super 400 on the date.
Right.
You know? So, like, damn, what was his name? Anyway, and so the guitars coming out of the James Brown band. I like Booker T and the MGs. You know, that was a band was a big role model for me. You know, Steve Cropper.
Right.
You know, I really enjoyed what they did.
Is that why you're the kind of a fan of the Telly as well?
Uh, I guess. I mean, I had a Telecaster when I was about 14. I got from a friend of mine in the neighborhood. It was all scratched up and had no case. I'm sure it was stolen. You know, but I got the guitar and I loved it. And I was like, I like this guitar. You know, but I think my first guitar was a Gibson Melody Maker.
Oh yeah.
That was like my first good Gibson guitar. You know, but you know, and then a friend of mine who I remember I was telling you that I was playing in little neighborhood bands, and one of the guys in the band, his mom had a couple of B.B. King records in her collection. You know, I had no clue as to who B.B. King was at that time, but he said, you know, you might like this record. You know, some pretty good guitar playing on here. You know, and it was, you know, like one of those. He had a couple of those old color photo B.B. King LPs. You know, 3 o'clock in the morning, or BB's greatest hits or something like that. You know, and so you know, I was blown away by B.B. King at an early age. You know, it's one of my first heroes, B.B. King, playing "Sweet Little 16." 3 o'clock in the morning.
I hear that tune
every
pop
day,
up a lot.
You know, every day I have the blues, or you know, those swinging big band arrangements with the T-Bone Walker type guitar, you know,
right.
screaming guitar. You know, I fell in love with those recordings. That was a big influence. So you got James Brown, you got Booker T and the MGs, you got B.B. King, and then right around the time I got turned on to B.B. King, I also got turned on to Jimi Hendrix. And Are You Experienced had just come out. You know, I dug that, and I noticed too that Jimi Hendrix's his rhythm guitar playing was very similar to what Curtis Mayfield was playing. The type of hammer-ons, and you know, like church sounding chords.
Right.
Jimmy was playing this kind of the same way, only through 2 Marshalls, you know, with a wah-wah pedal. But he was playing the same thing that Curtis Mayfield was playing rhythmically, you know, like when he played rhythm guitar. Not, you know, of course, Curtis didn't play screaming leads, you know, like Jimmy did.
Right.
But the rhythm guitar playing is very similar. You know, I noticed that right away. I really dug the way he played, you know, just rhythm guitar. I'm a big fan of rhythm guitar. So, you know, I zoned in on that. So those guys were big influences. And then being in New Haven, I was able to see a lot of those guys play live, you know. Who did I see? You know, and I'm talking about when I was like 12, 13 years old, 14 years old. You know, New Haven was a big stopover for guys going up and down the East Coast. The bands would play in New York, then they'd stop in New Haven, then they'd go up to Providence or whatever, Rhode Island, then up to Boston. That was so a lot of those bands, you know, the Rascals. I liked them. I liked the way that guy played rhythm guitar, so I went to see them. Uh, Jeff Beck, Jimi Hendrix, all the usual suspects. I was
Mm.
able to see in New Haven live, because I knew even at an early age that one way to learn is to go see these guys play, not just listen to the records, not just listen to the recordings, but to see them and hear them live, see how they hold the guitar, how how they hit the strings,
Right.
how loud they played, were they using effects, could they play good rhythm guitar? Everybody played, you know, great or almost great solos, but could they play rhythm too? You know,
You
I
had
was
very
zoning in
discerning
on that.
taste.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
If you could solo, but your rhythm guitar playing was sad, then I kind of dismissed you. You know,
Yeah. Cool.
it's, like Mike Bloomfield. He was a great soloist, but his rhythm guitar playing was kind of weak.
Mm.
I thought. So I wasn't really a big fan of his. I mean,
Right.
I dug his bands, like Electric Flag and those kind of bands back in the, late '60s, and I bought the records, those records that he did after the Paul Butterfield band. He was a great soloist, but his rhythm guitar player and his playing was fine. But I knew that it was good. It was part of the learning process to see these guys live.
Right.
So I made it a point to go to as many concerts. And again, my parents let me go. They knew that I was deep in it. And, I would find a couple of friends to go with, or I'd go by myself if I couldn't find anybody to go with me.
Mm.
First time I saw Jimi Hendrix, my dad took me. you know,
That's cool.
yeah, my dad took me to see Jimi Hendrix in 19, I think it was 1968, in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and I'll never forget that one. Because my dad, he liked jazz and he liked guitar players. And he was trying to learn how to play guitar, so
Hmm.
he was curious.
My next question was, what non-musician has had the biggest impact on you? But it sounds like maybe your dad sort of was a bit of an impact on you, and just being so open to
Yeah,
allowing you to do stuff. And yeah.
my parents were a big had a big impact, simply because they were very giving is the word.
Hmm.
They bought me an instrument, no problem. They let me play with my friends. They let me go to concerts, but I had to keep my schoolwork up too.
Right.
I could, there was a
That
price to pay. There was a price to pay with all of that stuff. I could go out and I could do whatever, but I couldn't. I had to keep my grades up to a degree. And so
that's just good
so
parenting.
yeah. you know.
uh, you let's see. Did you attend Berkeley College of Music?
Yeah, well, I was accepted, and I went very briefly, but I got before I actually started going there, I got a road gig with the Five Satins, with Fred Paris and the Five Satins.
Oh wow. Okay.
So yeah, so I never completed a full year, you
Okay.
know. So I went on the road, and that was my first road gig. That was my short-lived Berkeley situation.
Well, can you talk
Um,
a little bit about like on the job training on the bandstand as opposed to school?
yeah, you have to. I learned early on that you have to give the band leader what he wants. You have to be on time. You have to have your equipment in order, and you have to kind of. I noticed that the band leaders would read the room, so to speak. So you watch how the band leaders interact with the promoters, the side musicians. It's a learning experience like that, and rehearsal, how to rehearse the band, and yeah, and then just playing every night. You're building up, your technique just by playing every night.
Yeah, there's nothing like that.
Yeah, I wish I had, just finished 4 years at Berkeley and gotten, reading and orchestration and all this kind of stuff under my belt.
Mm.
But then I say to myself, well, maybe if I had gone to Berkeley, I never would have got the gig with Dizzy.
You never know.
You never know. I don't know. Who knows what I would have done, but
right.
It just turned out, the way it did.
Whiskey, wine, or beer?
Whiskey, wine, or beer?
Yeah. What do you prefer?
When I was young, I liked beer. But now I prefer a good glass of wine or a good bourbon.
Yeah, that's what I've been sort of drinking lately is bourbon. Yeah, it's not like I'm trying to promote alcoholism or anything like that. It's just something interesting.
Yeah. A nice cold beer on a hot day.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Creature comforts. How do you feel about the word jazz used to describe the music that you play? Because I know, I know
it's turned into a political hot political topic in certain circles. Jazz, well, it doesn't bother me as much as it bothers others. However, Dizzy called it our music. He said that they all called it our music. They didn't call it jazz.
I also heard Dizzy talking about they didn't even call it bebop when he was playing with Parker. Like that was a name that somebody else made up.
Yeah, not at all. The media put that on there. They just called it like that bebop music. Bebop as like a derisive term, for the music. Bebop. It's something that the average person couldn't understand. They just called it bebop.
Right. Because I guess there's a lot of that sound in there, especially on the ending of a phrase. Da da. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I guess maybe
yeah. But that I don't think that was part of how it came about. Maybe in singing phrases you might do that, but I don't think they put that name on the music. Some magazine article called it that, or some newspaper article may have given it that term.
We got to come up with a catchy name.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. The term jazz, that's what it's been called, forever.
Yeah, because I know Miles hated that.
Yeah.
I guess a lot of some people still do, like you said. What is the best decision you ever made, and what is the worst decision you ever made?
Oh, Jesus. Maybe the best decision I ever made was moving to New York City when I was 21 and 22 years old. That was probably the best music decision I ever made. The worst decision I ever made, I don't know. I don't. There's a lot of those.
But would you say you have any regrets? Or are you a type of person that has any regrets?
we all have regrets.
Well, some people say they don't have any, but I find that
They're
hard to
lying.
believe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's my
They're
outlook
lying.
on it. That's my outlook as well. What scenario would you choose if you had to? Okay. If you had to do a gig with either a great guitar and a crappy amp, or a crappy guitar and a great amp. You couldn't have a good guitar and a good amp. It had to be one or the other.
Probably a crappy guitar and a good amp.
Yeah. Okay.
You can kind of maybe work around certain things on the guitar, but as long as the speaker and the amp is good,
yeah,
you can get a sound. That's
right.
People forget that the amp is half your sound.
It is. It's true. Yeah.
Some people pay less attention to the amp than the guitar. I mean, a good amp is essential for an electric guitar player.
Yeah.
Good amp is essential. It's in the fingers and all that stuff, all the usual stuff that people say about getting a sound and blah, blah, blah. But having a great amp is also a big part of it too.
I agree. I mean, I would rather have both. but
yeah.
For me, like that guitar behind me, it's a 7-string. So it has a high A string on it. So I can't go to a store and just pick up any old guitar. You know what I mean? So I would almost rather choose having that guitar and go through a crappy amp as long as it works.
No, I've done gigs with crappy amps and it's awful.
Yeah.
It's awful. Playing gigs with Dizzy, and there was no piano player. I was the piano player.
Right.
Guitar. There were no keyboards. So the guitar has to be clear and full of body and life. A dead amp is death for the whole band. Well,
yeah, it's a whole other story if it keeps cutting in and out or it's like distorting when you don't want it to or whatever. But So since we're on that topic, what is your sort of go-to guitar and amp these days?
Well, right now I go back and forth. I have an old Gibson L5 that was gifted to me. Roger Thames, that's his Facebook name, but his real name is Tim Rogers. I became friends with Tim long ago, and he gave me this beautiful 1947 L5. And I also been playing guitars made by Wyatt Wilkie, who lives in Vancouver Island, and he's made 2 or 3 wonderful guitars for me. I also had a couple of guitars made by Victor Baker.
Yeah, I knew Victor a little bit before he moved out west.
Yeah. I was one of Victor's first clients maybe even before he came to New York. Now I also have a guitar made by Japanese luthier Norimasa Yamaoka. Norimasa Gibson ES330 style guitar, thin hollow body.
Yeah, and well, I guess while we're speaking of guitars and amps and stuff, I really dig your tone. It's very warm sounding. It kind of almost reminds me of my tone in a way. When I was listening to you, I guess it was like a club date in Poland or something. It was really such an amazing sound you were getting.
And here we are.
Oh, that's the live recording.
Yeah.
From Poland, from Warsaw. Yeah. I don't remember what amp I was using, but that was a Victor Baker guitar.
Wow, that's a really nice sound.
I think that may have been one of the last gigs I did with a Victor Baker guitar before I got my Wilkie guitar. Yes, thank you.
How do you like Poland? Because I've never been there. I have a really good bass player friend of mine that I went to school with a classical
Uh-huh.
bassist that lives in Poland, and I've always
Yeah,
wanted to go over
Poland's
and do
great.
gigs there. But
Poland is great. They really like jazz there. And one of the old musicians from 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 Poland, from Krakow. His name is Moniak. Moniak. I forget his first name, but he was one of the old jazz players from the '60s. And he was telling me that jazz music was the music of the revolution. The communists. They were fighting against communism, and communists hated jazz. It was American music, and
sure,
they hated jazz. Blah 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 blah. And these young guys were playing jazz as a form of revolt against this communist oppression. So it was like a political thing, as it was in the United States for different reasons.
yeah,
But it was anti-oppression, fighting for something,
right,
for something good. And Moniac was one of the first guys, tenor player, and it was mostly free music,
okay,
kind of similar to what John Coltrane was doing in the late '60s. That's what they were into. Usually, anywhere we go in Poland, there's always a crowd. People who have may have no clue about the music, but they come out anyway. They're interested. They're interested in hearing it. When they hear it, they like it. And maybe a car mechanic or a farmer or something like that. And they come up after the gig and they say, "I really enjoy what you do. And thank you for coming." And they mean it. It's
yeah.
not like some jive, just something to say. They really mean it, and I feel that, and so it makes me feel good.
Do you think that the average person maybe has a little bit more sophisticated ear, or is it just that they're more open?
I don't know if they have a sophisticated ear, but I think it affects their their emotions. You know, maybe they can't hear what it is we do. Some people who, I'm talking about non-musicians, of course.
No, yeah.
And people who don't play anything. But if it gets to them emotionally, then you got them. That's the first step.
Hopefully, I get a chance to go over there someday. I'd like to talk to you about Dizzy a little
Yeah.
bit. What was Dizzy like as a band leader and a person? Because I
Dizzy
mean,
was great.
I've never got a chance to meet Dizzy.
Yeah, he was a fun guy to be around. He was normal. He wasn't like he was great with people. He was a very personable kind of guy, and really truly enjoyed playing for people. He loved being on the road. It wasn't a drag for him to be on the road most nights of the year. He really loved it.
Kind of reminds me
Uh,
of BB King that way.
I guess so. Yeah, BB was on the road most nights of the year.
And he just loved
Um,
playing and loved talking
and
to
he loved
people. And
playing and he loved to, yeah. So Dizzy was the same way. He liked seeing his friends, the friends that were still around. He enjoyed seeing them out there on the road from time to time. It was funny. Sometimes, he was very friendly with people that you wouldn't think he would know. You know, like I remember seeing Dizzy and Albert King together in an
wow,
airport, and they were old friends and slapping each other on the back, and they even dressed kind of the same way.
right?
They're from a certain generation, so they had
Hmm.
the same ideas about style and so and they were very friendly. Albert King and Disney, so it was great to see him interact with people like that. Very charming guy, as well as being a great trumpet player. I mean,
Right.
everybody knows that. Everybody knows that he was one of the founders of bebop and blah blah blah. But he was also a great person.
Yeah, well, that's the kind of thing that I was hoping that you were gonna talk about. Yeah.
He loved kids, intrigued with being around animals, and he was just a nice guy.
Cool.
But he was very serious about the music, and he's one of those guys that had the abbreviated rehearsals down to a science,
Right.
Because I mean, we didn't rehearse,
Uh-huh.
I mean, when I joined the band, Rodney Jones was the guitarist in the band before me, and what happened was he just gave me a couple of cassettes of the live show, and he said, "Learn these tunes, and you'll be okay." And that's what I did. But that that was like my rehearsal, shedding those tapes.
Mm-hmm.
And then the first rehearsal, we just with Dizzy, it was a meet and greet where we just kind of played Night in Tunisia. He showed me the form. He had a little arrangement for Night in Tunisia, showed it to me, then we played it down once, maybe a couple of other tunes, and then that was it. I was in the band. and that was it. I was in the band. I played first gig. I figured, well, I'll probably be in the band for a week or two or a month, and then he'll find someone else. I was very insecure, but it turned out that I stayed in the band off and on for about 12 years or so.
Right.
More than 10 years, a little more than 10 years.
Maybe just talk briefly what you learned from Dizzy, because I imagine there's some things that maybe you weren't even realizing you were learning at the time that's like almost immeasurable now. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, I learned, I saw that he had interesting arrangements. He would come up with interesting arrangements of tunes. He wouldn't just like play a tune. He would have interesting openings and endings and interludes, things like that, that I never really thought about too much. I was just into like trying to burn on my solo.
Right.
And he had that down. He made me aware of that just by doing it. I mean, it was just keeping my mouth shut and my eyes and ears open in the business, just being on time, being nice to people you meet backstage, because you never know who you're talking to.
Right.
A lot of times. And, keeping in shape, practicing, playing, we were playing every night, but so it's good to, practice after the gig.
It's like, I just don't feel comfortable in this one spot in the tune. Like I better fix it or something,
or
whatever. Right?
Yeah. Like and I was recording a lot of those gigs too. The first 2 or 3 years I was in the band, I had like a box full of cassettes, to make sure that I was playing whatever correctly.
Right.
Listen to my solo. Oh, that's sad. I won't play that again. Or that sounded pretty good. I think I'll use that one again. My little licks and lines and whatnot.
And I'm sure Dizzy noticed that stuff, or else maybe you only would have been in the band for a month. You know what I mean? Like you're probably like doing your homework and you're trying to improve and get better. And
yeah. He saw that. He saw that I was serious about it.
Did you ever meet anyone, like I'm sure you did, like jazz royalty at the time, being in his band?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah, all the usual suspects. Freddie Hubbard, Art Blakey, Ray Brown, Tommy Flanagan, Carmen McRae. All the big names knew Dizzy, and not just the jazz players. I told you, Albert King knew Dizzy. Gatemouth Brown and Dizzy were friends.
Wow. Okay.
B.B. King, people like that, Leontine Price, the opera singer, was friends with Dizzy. And I remember Leontine Price from, my mom had some of her records. You know who Leontine Price was, right?
No, I don't.
Leontine Price was one of the first black superstars of opera music. She was an opera singer.
That's a big deal.
And, and it was a very big deal. When I met her, she was living in Italy. We played. It was a private event for like Vogue magazine and some fabulous apartment in Venice. And Leontine Price was there just hanging, And I was like, whoa, Miss Price, I'm a big fan, and my mom had your records and blah, blah, blah. And she was very down, very regular. Hey, baby, yeah, thank you very much. She was cool. So, Dizzy, had a lot of different types of friends, different types of musical friends. So,
nice.
Yeah, I met a lot of people.
Cool. I used a clip of Dizzy explaining rhythm and how to sing the rhythm to Salt Peanuts.
Oh, yeah.
Can I get you to watch that clip? I sent it to you.
I'm going to do it one more time for you. 1, 2, 3. Boom, salt peanut, boom, salt peanut, boom, salt peanut. You say, boom, salt peanut, see? You wait for that boom, and you say salt peanut. And then after you wait for the boom, you accent the P. You see, you must accent the P. You must not accent the nut. You must not say salt peanut. You say salt peanut. See, there is a difference. Now, I don't want to hear nobody accent no nuts here tonight.
Yeah.
Can you comment on that a little bit?
Well, you had to, a lot of times you're playing for people, most of the time, 99.9% of the time you're playing for audiences who don't know anything about jazz or the rhythmic components. And so Dizzy would, he would just have to break it down like salt peanuts, salt peanuts,
Yeah. Was that a routine that he did all the time?
Not all the time.
Okay.
Only if he heard in the audience that it was like a total train wreck would he stop and break it down like that.
I'm going to educate you now.
Yeah. Or if we were playing with symphony orchestra who just didn't get it, and we would do like a handful of Pop's symphony orchestra gigs during the year. We had arrangements. He had about maybe 10 arrangements for symphony orchestra in the book, and we would do these gigs. And sometimes the orchestras would get it. They knew how to swing a little bit, or just go with the flow of a jazz group. But some of them wouldn't. They'd be just like so stiff and unbending. So Dizzy would have to break it down, like peanuts.
Yeah.
You would have to do that.
Well, if you said it really fast, it could sound, or if you said it the wrong way, it could sound like something else.
Like soft penis. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Or something like that. Yeah. Because I heard that this is before you ever played with Dizzy, but he got like President Nixon to sing it or something too.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I don't know. So like
Jimmy Carter sang it.
Oh, really?
Jimmy Carter. Yeah, Dizzy was at the White House. This was before I was in the band.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, Jimmy Carter sang Salt Peanuts with Dizzy at the White House back in 1976 or 77, something like that. Yeah.
Cool.
And there's video. There's video.
Oh, is there?
On YouTube.
Okay.
I'm sure. Yeah, I think that's yeah.
Can I talk to you about, for lack of a better word, your playing psychology? Like say when you're improvising, what are you thinking about or not thinking about?
I'm not thinking about anything. I'm thinking about the melody, thinking about trying to keep my head clear. I'm, trying to lock in with the band, the bass and the drums, just lock in with the rhythm. And that's pretty much it, just go with the flow, trying to play with feeling.
Yeah.
Not just automatic runs and things like that. Just try to play.
I kind of liken it to being aware of things going on, but not thinking too hard about everything.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Oh. Melody is important. Like playing off the melody. Mm-hmm. Sonny Rollins did that in a huge way. Playing off the melody, creating motifs off the melody. He was great at that. Yeah, a lot of guys when it's their turn to solo, they forget about the melody completely. Just like rip,
Mm-hmm.
And but that's not where it's at for me.
Yeah, well, I really like the feel when you play. Like, maybe a lot of people are missing that nowadays. At least I try to. Like, my goal is to try to almost make it so you could dance to it. Like, almost have that feeling of danceability, even though you probably
I'm glad you said that, because jazz was dance music. It was for the people back in the day. And people would dance to it. I remember even my dad said, they would dance to songs like Ruby, My Dear by Thelonious Monk. Everybody looks at that. A lot of jazz musicians, look at that as a great piece of architecture and work, but it was just people dug the melody and the and the beat, and they would dance to it.
Right.
And that's why you see Monk jump up from the piano in these videos and he'd start dancing, because he knew that this was dance music. There's a certain flow to this music.
Yeah.
And tempo that is sometimes forgotten, where people can move to the music.
Right. Yeah, people don't really equate jazz with dancing anymore, but I try to make it feel as good as I can to get that same sort of vibe as much as I can, even though I'm not from that era or whatever. I wasn't, but I try to. That's what I like to hear. And I like to play with musicians that play that way too.
That get that. Yeah. Well, you have to have the musicians that are like-minded.
Yeah.
You can't have a band with kids who think nothing like the way you think.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know. I mean, New York is pretty good that way. That there's everything is steeped in the tradition to a certain extent, even with the younger guys. But there does seem to be an element of like almost playing math sometimes, like.
Yeah. I don't, there's great musicians, young musicians who are great technically. Sometimes it's missing the element of the blues.
Yeah. Is
there and a lot of them would say, well, we're moving the music forward. Yeah, well, Charlie Parker moved the music forward too, but he kept the element of blues and swing in it.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that there was a big element of swing in there too.
Yeah. So
that's the danceability part.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Did you say Charlie Parker was a great dancer?
I wouldn't doubt it. Yeah.
You know, he said that a lot of the musicians back in those days could dance.
Yeah.
Dizzy was a great dancer. Swing dance and salsa dancing. He could do all of that.
Cool. Yeah, awesome.
He said you got to know how to dance. so that you're feeling the rhythm freely in every part of your body.
Right. Yeah. No, I can dig it. Is there a style or a musician that has influenced you that people might be surprised to hear, but maybe you already answered that, like with say Jimi Hendrix and stuff?
Yeah, like Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix is still, I still listen to him from time to time. I also like, Jeff Beck, early Led Zeppelin. I also liked the Staple Singers, some of the old gospel music, Dixie Hummingbirds and groups like that.
And I think a lot of people don't realize how closely knit jazz and gospel is.
Yeah. Well, I think in order to be a well-rounded jazz musician, you have to study all of the great black music. Scott Joplin and Dixieland and Louis Armstrong and all the people from his area, or as many people as you can get a hold of. Also gospel music and blues, and of course bebop and swing. You have to study all of it, and then the jump early rock and roll bands from the 50s, late 40s, early 50s. Then the R&B of the late 50s and the 60s, and all of it. You have to study all of that, and then the early funk records. Kool and the Gang and James Brown, and all of that. You have to listen to that stuff. You have to get the history of black music to really know what it's all about, how to approach it honestly.
Right. Any hobbies outside of music?
I'm an old film noir buff.
Okay.
And I used to build model airplanes. I haven't done that for quite a long time now, but I used to build model airplanes. Hobbies. I mean, not so much. I play the guitar now. That's my hobby.
Right. I'm kind of the same way.
When I get into it, I enjoy cooking. That's pretty much it. And,
cool.
To be quite honest with you.
What's your favorite thing to cook?
The simplest things are often the best. A good steak. It took me a long time to learn how to cook a good steak. Chicken dishes, fish dishes, whatever.
Okay.
Whatever I choose to eat, I try to.
So you're
not too creative with it, just make it taste good.
Right. So just the same way you play.
Not a lot of sauces.
Right. So you kind of improvise dishes, like you don't have any like go-to, like I like making this dish or anything. Okay, cool.
I used to watch my dad. My dad was the cook in our home. And he would just improvise stuff. Just make stuff off the cuff. My mom would make all the special dishes, holiday dinners and things like that. Right. But the day-to-day cooking was largely my dad. And he taught me how to.
As long as you're using.
Taught me how to make breakfast.
Oh yeah. As long as you got good ingredients, how can you go wrong, right?
Yeah. Right. So watching my dad, he didn't use a cookbook. He just kind of threw stuff together and made it taste good.
Yeah.
That's it.
I was going to ask you what advice you would give anyone wanting to get into jazz, no matter what age. But you already talked about like that, getting back and going back and studying.
Yeah, it's a lot of listening. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of listening. And if you can, if you're in an area where you can, try to play with musicians who are better than you.
That's always the good advice, yeah.
And not just on the same level as you. You know, hold on a second. Let me. I gotta.
Sure.
Oddly enough, I didn't plug this in. Hold on a second. So, what were we talking about?
Get any advice of anyone that wants to get into playing jazz?
Learn your instrument to the best of your ability. Try to play with musicians who are better than you. Do a lot of listening, and try to see as many musicians as you can, and especially try to check out the older guys too. The guys who've been around the block. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I mean, that's what I did when I was 14, 15, 16, 17, excuse me. I didn't really go hear musicians who were my age and, you know, playing. I went to see the cats who were traveling through town and, you know, the older guys mm-hmm. who had some miles on them, you know. That's who you have to go see. You know, check out the older cats before they're not around anymore. You know, that's what I did.
Cool.
Be on time, you know, and just have fun.
If you're an hour early to the gig, you're late.
Yeah, but you know, you don't want to be an hour late.
Right. Yeah. I have to admit, I don't really know that much about Henry Threadgill. Can you talk a little bit about him? He seems like an interesting guy. Like,
yeah, well, Henry, he writes some interesting music. You know, he's
very classically influenced.
Yeah, he's influenced by, you know, classical music. He writes in that way, you know, but he also knows about, you know, funk and all the he knows about black music. You know, he's studied black music. He studied gospel and he studied the blues. He likes the blues. And, you know, it may not sound like it in a lot of his music, but or maybe it does to some people. But you know, he's a blues guy, so he incorporates that into his kind of classical in a lot of instances sounding music. But I enjoyed playing with Henry. Henry was, you know, that was one of the best bands I'd ever been in, besides Dizzy's group, you know. And now Henry would rehearse because, you know, his music was difficult. So Henry rehearsed, spent a lot of time in rehearsal, and got the music down. As opposed to just winging it like Dizzy and a lot of
right.
You know, you know, you rehearse on stage or at 10 minutes of sound check. You know, that's your rehearsal.
Right. Like with Dizzy, it was probably more like, well, the tunes are pretty straight ahead, but here this certain arrangement that we've got to figure that one thing out. Just make sure you nail it or whatever.
Yeah, and you know, if you're a good musician, you know, and, you know, you can hear and you have an understanding of harmony and rhythm, and you can deal with that, you know. It wasn't that big of an issue. It's just different ways that people work. You know?
Right, yeah. Well, anything you want to promote or mention before we call it a day?
Just being here with you is promotion enough. You know. I mean, I don't have any CDs out or anything. I'm very slow, you know, recording. Although I'm, you know, have a session coming up soon.
Mm-hmm.
With Stellar Records, I think is the name of it. It's a tenor player named Corey Reeds.
Oh yeah. He's from Vancouver, right?
Yeah. He asked me to record for his label, so I'm gonna have my organ trio record for him soon in the next month or two. My last CD was 4 or 5 years ago now, and that was on Positone Records. And I haven't recorded for them, since that was my last recording with them, and it was Oregon Trio record. So I'm looking forward to recording again and playing next week with a great baritone player, Jason Marshall. I always look forward to playing with him. I met Jason playing with Dr. Ron Smith.
Oh.
Jason was in his band. We were in the band together. We enjoy each other's playing. So he's asked me to play in a couple of these years. And I hope he records it.
What is it about? I never planned on asking you this question, but what is it about organ trios that they just really groove hard? Like I've only had a chance to play in an organ trio on a handful of gigs, and it wasn't a jazz gig. It was more like R&B and blues and stuff. But there's something about not having a bass player that just, man, it was always cooking.
Yeah, it's just the sound, the timbre of the instrument, and
because guitar and organ blend together nice.
Just a greasy, funky sound.
Yeah.
That people identify with. People dig it. Also, the organ, that was one of the first jazz situations that I was in when I first started learning how to play the music. Coming out of a rock and blues scene into swinging jazz music, it was an organ group. So I really identify with it in that way. And people respond to it. I remember, playing in a black club and people responding to the organ, because it reminds us of church. It has a connection to church, and we have a connection with the organ that way. Just swinging with a nice sounding organ. There's nothing like it.
Yeah, I agree.
It's really in your face.
For some reason, like I did like maybe 3 or 4 gigs with this band as a trio, and then on the last gig, when he got a bass player on the gig, the groove just got ruined. But it was just so much nicer with, I mean, that could have been just the bass player, but it was just so much nicer with just the organ player playing all the bass lines and stuff.
Yeah, the timbre, the sound with the right hand, and the way the bass is played with the left hand. Like a lot of people think that bass lines are played with the foot, but no, it's played with the left hand. And maybe it's just the way that the notes connect with the left hand. It's a different feel than an upright or electric player. It feels different. I don't know. It's hard to describe. I'm trying to.
I know. That's it's a mystery.
It's just the feeling.
It's just
exactly. The feeling.
Yeah. I get it. So. Well, Ed, thank you so much for doing this interview.
Thank you for asking me to do it. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Well,
it's good to see you.
Yeah, it's been a while, right?
Lay eyes on you.
I talked to you before about possibly starting up a podcast and stuff like that, and that never happened. But so I'm really glad I got to interview you at least.
Yeah. Well, thanks for asking me.
No problem, man.
Appreciate it.
Well, have a good night.
Take care of yourself.
You too.
All right.
Take care. Bye.
All right. Thanks. All right. Bye.